Good morning and welcome everyone to Nutrition and Food, Ongoing Journey for Better Health, hosted by the Department of Nutrition and Food Science. My name is Sibel Labban and I will be presenting this event. I would like to welcome our President, Dr. Fadlu Khouri, members of the AUB administration, our distinguished guests, faculty, staff, alumni, students, and everyone who made it today. Thank you all for joining us in celebrating AUB's 150th anniversary. Before we begin, I would like to ask you all to kindly rise to the Lebanese national anthem and AUB's alma mater. Our event comprises a series of lectures that will take place in this lecture hall until 2 p.m., as well as interactive activities that have started since 9 a.m. in FAFS courtyard and will continue until 3 p.m. These activities feature the following: the yearly Fit-a-thon themed flashback to our roots, sports nutrition with FAFS alumni team Healthy Happy Us, and the food safety booth in collaboration with Roadster Diner. And now, on behalf of the Nutrition and Food Science Department, we sincerely hope that you will enjoy our event and that it will meet your expectations. And now we will start today's event with an opening speech by Dean Nahla Hwalla. Dr. Nahla Hwalla is Professor of Human Nutrition, Registered Dietitian with the US Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and Dean of the Faculty of Agricultural and Food Science at AUB. Dr. Hwalla's research responds to global nutritional challenges with a focus on obesity, whereby she has provided her country with valuable, highly cited research. Dr. Hwalla has provided Lebanon with the first and second national studies on obesity and has established an associated research unit on undernutrition and obesity and another on nutrition and non-communicable disease, supported by the Lebanese CNRS. She has provided Lebanon and FAO with the first and second country profiles on nutrition and established the first NGO for nutritionists in Lebanon and the region, the Lebanese Academy for Nutrition and Dietetics, LAND. She was appointed by the Director General of WHO to serve on the Expert Advisory Panel on Nutrition. Recently, Dr. Hwalla spearheaded a program on food security to build capacity nationally and regionally. In recognition of her work, Dr. Hwalla was elected Fellow of International Union of Nutritional Sciences and Fellow of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, FAND. She also received the 2012 Distinguished Researcher Award by the Lebanese CNRS and the 2014 Susan Bulkley Butler Leadership Excellence Award by the International Breast Cancer and Nutrition IBCN Group at Purdue University, USA. She was recently honored as a woman leader in AUB and as a research pioneer by the Lebanese Parliament. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Hwalla.
Thank you, Sibel. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, and distinguished speakers, I am delighted to be here today on this honorable event as we gladly celebrate the 150th anniversary of AUB, the university we are all proud of. First, I would like to thank you for your presence and welcome you to FAFS celebrating nutrition and food, ongoing journey for health, for better health. I'm especially grateful to Dr. Fadl Khouri, our president, for honoring us with his presence, and also for members of our administrative and colleagues. I would like also to extend a warm welcome to Mrs. Joyce Haddad, representative of the Minister of Health, Mr. Wa'il Abu Faour, and Mr. Salim Idris from FAFS Alumni Chapter. For 150 years, this university has succeeded in achieving academic excellence and regional distinction. It has been committed to providing an exceptional education, advancing knowledge, and meeting the evolving needs of Lebanon and the MENA region. The school is glad to have shared more than 60 years of this outstanding journey. We are indeed proud to have accompanied AUB in a remarkable path towards making history. I take this opportunity to express on behalf of the school sincere gratitude to the university administration for helping us meet our students, faculty, and staff space needs. We thank this administration for believing in our academic mission and generously supporting our needs. It is with their much appreciated help that we are able to provide our students, faculty, and staff with better space, and to provide our faculty and students with an enabling environment for teaching, research, and outreach. I take this opportunity also to tell you that this room has also received recently a pledge for renovating it. It's a substantial donation from one of our external advisory board, and we are very grateful for that. So next time you come here, it's going to be a nicer place to be in. FAFS joined AUB family in 1952 when the School of Agriculture was first established. Back then, we offered only one curriculum in the discipline of agriculture. Since that time, the school responded to societal needs and introduced programs that made a difference. Today, I can proudly say that we have succeeded in doing so. The societal needs of our communities have actually inspired us to focus on three main pillars. One is food security, to enable food production, access to food, to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food. The second pillar is the resilient environment, to positively impact eco-cities and ecosystems. The third and finally, nutrition for health, to address the prevention and management of diet-related chronic diseases. Today, we are guided by the Sustainable Development Goals adopted by the UN General Assembly in October 2015. These global goals reflect an international development and sustainability agenda and aim to address the root causes of poverty, hunger, food security, disease, human well-being, and access to water and sanitation. FAFS is engaged in addressing many of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, including zero hunger, good health and well-being, food security, responsible consumption and production, and life on land. As you all know, FAFS offers 5 undergraduate BS programs, a BS in agribusiness, a BS in agriculture, a BS in Food Science and Management, a Bachelor of Landscape Architecture, and a BS in Nutrition and Dietetics. In addition, this school offers 11 graduate programs, of which 3 have been introduced last year: a Master's in Food Security, a Master in Food Safety, and a Master's in Public Health Nutrition jointly with the Faculty of Health Sciences. Gratitude to the endless efforts and perseverance of our school, professors, students, and staff members. We have proudly established ourselves as a faculty of firsts. Our cutting-edge achievements in education, research, and outreach in the various departments and disciplines have in fact earned us this pioneering situation. In education, we were the first to introduce many professions in Lebanon and the region. For example, we are the first to adopt the land-grant U.S. agriculture system of education, the first to introduce the agribusiness major, and the first to introduce the food science and management program, and the first to start a US-styled landscape architecture program. We are also the first to introduce the dietetics profession in Lebanon and the region, and more recently, we have introduced the first food security graduate program in the region. The journey of excellence in education culminated with the nutrition and dietetics program receiving US accreditation from Ascend in 2013. This is the first program in the region and the third worldwide to secure this prominent accreditation. Last year, I'm happy to say 8 of our students earned a US registered dietitian status by Ascend, studying in Lebanon and in this faculty, a stamp of excellence, licensing them to practice even in the US. In research, FAFS is a leader in generating knowledge in various areas of agriculture, nutrition and food science, and community development. Focusing on nutrition, this is the topic of today, AUB ranks first in Lebanon in the highest percentage of peer-reviewed research on nutrition and non-communicable diseases, with 61%, we did this study with Luqman, with 61% of publications emanating from AUB and the rest from all universities combined in Lebanon. In outreach, the school pioneered community development in the country and established the Environment and Sustainable Development Unit, an interdisciplinary research and development center specialized in community development and sustainable agriculture. This afternoon, they are holding a special event for the 150th anniversary. Focusing on nutrition, the Nutrition and Food Science Department was designated the first WHO collaborating center in any discipline in the country. It established the first NGO of nutritionists in Lebanon, and which was mentioned by Sibel, LAND, Lebanese Association for Nutrition and Dietetics. Today, our Department of Nutrition and Food Science is celebrating the AUB's 150th anniversary. Throughout the years, this Department of Nutrition and Food Science has pioneered and excelled in the field of nutrition and dietetics, has graduated distinguished alumni and leaders in their discipline. I am pleased to welcome in our midst today one of our distinguished alumni, our keynote speaker for the day, Dr. Amira Qassis from Nestle Research Center in Switzerland. Amira will tell us about her exciting journey in feeding the world's first solar pilots. Tomorrow, we will also be holding a special event to celebrate food and nutrition security in the MENA region, discussing mainly the potent role of sustainable diets in securing a sustainable future. Now, I urge you, all of you, to join our efforts in moving towards a sustainable community. Thank you again for being here today and joining us in FAFS celebration on the occasion of AUB's 150th anniversary. Enjoy your day with lectures and entertaining activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hwalla. Our first presenter is keynote speaker and FAFS alumna Dr. Amira Qassis. Dr. Amira Qassis is a research scientist in the Public Health Department of the Nestle Research Center in Lausanne, Switzerland. A graduate of AUB in 2000, Dr. Cassis obtained her MS and PhD from McGill University, Canada, and started her career at Nestlé as a research scientist working on energy metabolism. During this time, she led a team of experts who designed the nutritional program of the Solar Impulse pilots. Dr. Cassis will present the role of nutrition in shaping the future through the Solar Impulse project. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Cassis.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much, Sibeth, for the introduction. Can everybody hear me? Microphone? I can stand there. Thank you for inviting me to take part in this great celebration. I'm very honored to be here, especially that it's room 102. And room 102 has had a very special place in my heart because I spent a lot of time sitting in these chairs. And I learned the base of everything I know today here, where you're sitting. A lot of things have changed in 16 years. I'm a graduate from 2000. And although this still feels like home, and I'm very proud to see the achievements of the faculty, especially the program accreditation, which was merely a dream when I was sitting in your spot. So that's very, very nice to see. Nutrition helping shape the future. I'm a mother now, so a lot of things have changed in my life as well. And when I think about the stories that I would like to tell my son, the story I'm going to tell you today definitely makes that list. And the story starts with these two gentlemen, Bertrand Piccard and André Borschberg, who had a dream that the future should belong to clean technologies, and a mission to demonstrate that we can do so much more than we think using renewable energy. And what better way to do this, or to prove this, than to fly a solar airplane around the world. So in 2003, they started a company called Solar Impulse. They started the construction of an airplane with the same name, and they set a very high objective for themselves to go around the world using zero fuel and relying exclusively on solar energy. The round the world would be divided into multiple flights across 3 or 4 continents and crossing 2 big oceans. It would start in Abu Dhabi, going east, India, China, going to the US, to Europe, and then back to Abu Dhabi. So we're talking about multiple flights of a duration of up to 5 days and 5 nights, and multiple stopovers in order to spread the message of sustainability around the world. So I am not an engineer or a specialist, so I'm going to say just 2 words on the airplane. If I was to describe this airplane very simply, this is an aircraft that has the wingspan of a 747, the weight of a family car, and the speed of a scooter. So it's a pretty slow airplane, thus the 5 days, 5 nights flights. In order to make this plane as light as possible, because this is what was the first concern, it's a 1-seater, so it can only host 1 pilot. The cockpit is unpressurized with no thermal regulation, and there's obviously limited weight and space allowance for food and drinks. But the big question mark for an airplane, for a solar airplane that has to fly 5 days and 5 nights in a row, is how do you fly at night in the absence of the sun? And the strategy of Solar Impulse was to rise with the sunrise, accumulating energy from the sun to climb and to charge their batteries, and then descending with the sunset, using potential energy, so gliding down using potential energy from altitude and energy from the batteries to make it through the night. Of course, starting 4,000 meters, and the maximum altitude is 8,500 meters. At 4,000 meters, we have a risk of hypoxia that occurs. So that was one of the main concerns of the pilots. This is why the pilots would wear an oxygen mask during their flight above 4,000 meters. Now, the closest parallel to a solar impulse flight of 5 days and 5 nights is climbing up and down the Everest mountain in 24 hours and doing it over and over and over again, up to 5 times. So just to give you an idea of what the body goes through going up or flying this airplane. In 2010, the pilots showed, or Solar Impulse proved to the world that the plane was sustainable. So it could go up and down, it could follow this strategy, and theoretically it could perpetually fly. But they quickly realized that the round the world was going to be more than a technical challenge. It would be a great human challenge. Your plane is sustainable, it can go on forever, but how can you make the pilot sustainable? How can a human being live in a cockpit with these constraints for 5 days and 5 nights? That same year, Solar Impulse and Nestlé Research entered a partnership to answer exactly this question. At the time, I had been working at the Nestlé Research Center for 2 years, exploring nutritional solutions and their impact on energy metabolism and metabolic health. So you can imagine my surprise when I was given the task or the assignment to put a team together and design a full nutritional program for these 2 pilots, and of course, personalized nutritional program. I have to admit, I was very scared, and there was a lot of unknown in this assignment. But looking back, I'm very glad that I took it because it was a great adventure and a wonderful learning experience. So the first thing I tried to do was to summarize what the constraints of the cockpits were. You can see in this picture, I'm sorry about the quality of the picture, it's not the best, but this is the pilot. You have the cockpit, this is the space, the living space. The pilot is confined in a very small space, 3.8 cubic meters to be more exact, limited food and water allowance, an unpressurized cabin, and limited thermal regulation. Actually, the cockpit is not thermally regulated at all. The pilots have to rely on their clothing for thermal regulation. So when we look at the effect on physiology, we know from high altitude and cold exposure literature that in these conditions we have an increased fluid requirement, decreased appetite, increased energy expenditure, and decreased movement in this particular case because of the confinement. So what we're dealing with in terms of physiology, and if we look at our favorite equation, calories in, calories out, the calories spent outweigh the calories in. And with the reduced movement or capacity to move in this cockpit, we had an increased risk of losing muscle mass. So these were our 2 concerns. We had to make sure that the pilot would get enough energy to avoid this weight loss, and especially to avoid muscle loss. So to tackle these problems or these constraints, we worked on 4 aspects. Nutrition, first and foremost. How do we get enough nutrients in the body of these pilots to make sure that they end around the world in a healthy way, in a sustainable way? Reward. We underestimate the power of pleasure in food. So in order to get these nutrients inside the pilots, they had to like the food that they were consuming. They had to look forward to them, especially that their appetite was affected. So that was a big work that we did there. Food preparation, of course, and food packaging to ensure that the meals are not only good, but they're safe and stable for a long period of time. So to summarize, our main objective was to design a personalized menu adapted to the pilot's nutritional requirements, the preferences, and of course, the environmental constraints. Now we get to the testing part. So we know a lot of the theory on what the nutrition should be in this context came from whether it's space nutrition. We had to see what the first pioneers in space did in terms of nutrition. High altitude sports, which matched the conditions here. But of course we had to test to see, first of all, what are the requirements specific to these pilots. And the first thing we did was to invite the pilots at the Nestlé Research Center in our metabolic unit, where we have this little contraption here, which is a small or a mini metabolic chamber. It's a design in-house that we use often in our clinical studies. So we measured their basal metabolic rates, and of course these are two different people, two different metabolic rates. We also looked at their body composition, and we looked at the 24-hour dietary recalls, not only to see the difference between calories in and calories out, but also to learn more about their dietary habits. One thing about the diet of Solar Impulse, and this was one of our objectives as well, we do not want just a paste out of a tube just for survival. So we needed to be close to their habits. How do they see their diet? And this is why we worked in close collaboration with the pilots in order to develop the diet. Setting nutritional targets. It was hard to know where to start, basically. But the top 3 nutritional targets or concern that we set for ourselves were fluids. Pilots have to be hydrated, especially when it comes to brain, when it comes to alertness. So fluids were our main priority. Energy, as I explained, we have to get as much energy as we can in them. And carbohydrates. And why carbohydrates? Because it's an efficient source of energy, it's a rapid source of energy, but also it's a macronutrient that's not very energy savvy. So it will not use a lot of energy to be consumed and processed, as compared to proteins and fats. So taking this into consideration, we could, at this point, estimate the nutritional targets based on the testing that we did on the basal metabolic rate, plus what we know about high altitude and cold temperature. We set an energy target of 2,300 to 2,500, depending on the pilot, of course. 50 to 60% of carbohydrates. The recommendations for high altitude and cold temperature are actually up to 70% carbohydrates. But in this case, the pilots were going to be not immobilized, but they would have limited physical activity. So we had to make sure that we also give enough protein to maintain their muscle mass. 30 to 30% of fat. Fat is important in cold environments. Fiber, normal fiber recommendation to maintain a good digestive system. Fluids based on the current recommendations, because at this point we hadn't tested any of their fluid requirements, including isotonic drinks, and with the recommendation to monitor their urine color to know if they are what part of the spectrum of dehydration they were on. Meal pattern. Meal pattern is increasingly important in research, nutritional research in general. And in this case, meal pattern is crucial when you're at high altitude. Small, frequent meals are recommended because they decrease the risk of having very high insulin peaks. They help with the energy level and the glucose level. And they were shown to potentially help with altitude sickness. Altitude sickness is a very big problem in altitude, and it could be fatal, of course. So that was very important. Additionally, since we are not on a mountain and the rise is not very slow, the pilots go up and down very fast, they're exposed to these fluctuations, we thought we would adapt the diet composition to the altitude at which the pilots were. So to start, when the pilots were below 3,500 meters, the food that would be recommended to them and provided to them was high in protein quality and quantity, and they could have larger meals. Whereas when they were above 3,500 meters, the diet was more of a high altitude diet. So high carbohydrate, high fat, high reward, of course, high energy density because the portions are smaller, and easy to consume. We coined these two diets the survival diet, which is the diet in high altitude, and then the recovery diet. This is the diet that we use to recover muscle loss if there was a risk of muscle loss. So the menu, the gourmet menu of Solar Impulse. And by the way, I have samples with me, so if you want to come and see them later on, you're most welcome to. This is where the experimental kitchen worked its magic to translate a nutritional target that we set for them into meals, into tasty meals. They went through the whole Nestlé portfolio, whether it's cereal, breakfast, energy bars, baby food. Baby food is actually something that we really explored in this project. And also, in order to target their specific preferences, we decided to develop some meals in-house. And these were the warm meals because when we asked the pilots, what would really make you happy? You're up there, it's cold, you haven't slept much, what would make you happy? And the first thing that came out of their mouths was a warm meal. There's really no energy up there to take from solar energy to warm the meals. There was not enough energy. So we had to figure out a way to provide them with warm meals. So the kitchen started working on them. They proposed 4 choices of warm meals, 4 choices of soups, 1 tabouleh, of course, the Lebanese touch, and 2 breakfasts. The meals were proposed to the pilots. We had numerous tasting sessions in the experimental kitchen. The pilots tested, tasted, rated the food in order of preference, and we did many iterations to come up at least with the recipe. Now, a menu catered to the pilot's preferences, of course, very important. But safety first is our motto at Nestlé. So no matter what we were going to provide, it had to be safe and it had to be stable. So we had an additional concern in that regard to have a microbiological safety for 3 months, spilling and bursting hazards. So this had to be taken into consideration as well. We're in a context where spilling and bursting hazards could be fatal. Limited weight and space allowance. Again, we come back to this because we had an allowance of 2 kilos per day maximum of food on the plane, and we could not go higher. So energy density and nutritional density was important. In terms of quality, when you prepare food, and these were ready-to-eat foods, not dehydrated meals. When you prepare dehydrated meals and you want to make them stable for 3 months, there's a risk on texture, degradation, risk on taste, etc., depending on the ingredients that you've used. Especially that it was agreed with the pilots that we would use no preservatives at all. So it was all fresh ingredients, natural ingredients, and that went again with their message of sustainability in this context. The first article that came out about the Nestlé involvement in Solar Impulse was entitled "A Risotto 5 Years in the Making." And of course, making a risotto 5 years is a long, long time. So of course, 5 years is from the beginning of nutritional assessment to the delivery of the first meal to the pilots on their first trip. And a big part of this, or the major part of the time, was taken by recipe preparation, iteration, packaging. And I'm going to go through this process to give you an idea of what we prepared. So the first step was recipe preparation at the experimental kitchen. Packaging and processing, we had to find packaging that would withstand the conditions of the cockpit, so altitude fluctuations and temperature fluctuations. Then the food had to be tested for 3 months at 3 different temperatures, 4, 20, and 42, because these were the temperatures that the food might be stored in, exposed to, whether it's in the plane or on the ground. Also, we had to think about the storage during the round the world. So meals stored at 20 degrees, and this is just to show you the curve that we would get in the cockpit. The temperature would get to minus 12 or lower, and up to 30. So these are really extreme temperatures that you can go through. After the 3 months test, we have the packaging stability test. So this was done in a simulator, of pressure simulator and temperature simulator. Then the tasting panel that I mentioned in the previous slide, and recipe adjustments, and we would go through the process over and over again. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. This is my personally favorite saying, and I kept repeating this to myself during this project, because it would have been easy to provide the pilots with a dehydrated meal to be reconstituted in flight, but this was a no-go from the start. In collaboration with the engineering team, it was decided that it was a big spilling and bursting hazard. So that was out of the question. So we had to come up with these ready-to-eat meals, so a full recipe inside a package that they would warm in a self-heating bag. And this was the main difficulty of this project. And the opportunity here is that we filed a patent on a method that the experimental kitchen developed through trial and error to provide packed, safe and stable meals, which preserves the taste, limits the loss of vitamins, because we tested this as compared to the conventional method, and limits the use of water, which is also something that goes along the message of sustainability. Up till now, we are still in the theoretical phase to a certain extent. We had a great opportunity during this project to take part of a 72-hour simulation, a flight simulation that was organized by the team of Solar Impulse. And during this 72-hour simulation, the life on board was simulated to look at sleep and fatigue, vigilance, nutrition, and ergonomics. Keeping in mind that this was done on the ground, so the only 2 things that were not simulated were temperature and pressure, which are important, but this was the closest we could get to the pilot's living space. I apologize for the pictures, but this is to give you an idea of the cockpit, or the cockpit's space. So the first important aspect of life on board is space management. How does the pilot interact with his space? How does waste management, how is waste management approached? Food, same thing. So just to see how the pilot interacts with their space management. Simulating life on board is also about physical activity. So I said very limited physical activity. However, the pilots had a personalized exercise routine that was based mostly on yoga and Pilates, but that allowed them, since they can't stand up in the cockpit, it allowed them to do some sort of exercise to maintain their muscle tone. So in the hope that with enough protein and enough physical activity, we would be able to maintain their muscle mass. The resting routine was very interesting. They both have different resting methods. Bertrand Piccard is an adept of autohypnosis, so he would hypnotize himself, basically, and have a resting period of 20 minutes, whereas André Borschberg was more into meditation. They're both resting methods where you don't necessarily sleep, but you get your body to rest. And this is why I was saying there's very little sleep in solar impulse flight, and this was one of the big concerns of the pilot. Mealtime, which is what we're talking about today. Here are the pilots experimenting or testing the package. This is a self-heating bag where basically, it's like the camping self-heating bags that you use with the sachet that provided by us. 10 minutes for preparation, which sometimes was judged a little too long, a little too short. But in the end, this experiment was very, very important to also look at the interaction of the pilot with his meals, if he was able to manage and able to follow the recommendations that we gave them in the amount of time that we had. What we did, so the Nestlé research part of this simulation was about looking at or monitoring the nutritional status. And we did this by looking at energy balance, taking the body weight before and after the 72 hours, food intake, compositional analysis, and this we did by measuring the food also before and after to know exactly how much they ate. We had a questionnaire to know about their meal patterns, hunger and satiety, to inquire about the portion size, and blood indicators of energy deficit or energy balance. Hydration, plasma and urine were examined for indicators of hydration. We also looked at thirst through questionnaires and measured water intake versus water output. Protein status, very important, so nitrogen balance, nitrogen in versus nitrogen out, that we measured as well as blood urine markers such as albumin, creatinine, etc. We asked about their digestive comfort, given the fiber content that we had recommended, and packaging functionality. We also had a collaboration with university, the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne, who has a life science section. And we collaborated with them to look at sleep and fatigue. And that's a very interesting area as well not in life in space or in solar impulse, but in our daily life. So we looked at the circadian rhythm. We had an EEG and an ECG conducted. Also questionnaires about mood and alertness, and exactly looking and watching the pilots in their sleep routine. The pilots are two very different people. Results are not necessarily, we cannot average their results. So I'm just showing you an example of what we got out of this 72-hour simulation. Our target was 2,500 kilocalories. As you can see, day 1, day 2, and day 3, the pilot had an issue in reaching their target. They were not able to reach the target. And this was for different reasons. They were too busy, they were experimenting different things. So it became clear, even though we're not taking into consideration altitude, which will increase their energy needs, that already we had a problem making the pilots reach their energy target. Again, for hunger and satiety, so this is the scale based on visual analog scales. Hunger and satiety were pretty constant except for some peaks, and we really wanted to avoid these peaks during the flight. This particular pilot had 4 large meals instead of 11 small meals that we recommended, and it became clear that this was not the right way to do things. So our key learnings from this particular simulation was to encourage, again, the nibbling pattern instead of the gorging pattern, increase energy density of meals, especially soups. So our soups were enriched in healthy oils to make sure that we would increase the energy. Accommodate pilot's meal timing, which is also an interaction with the pilot. Same thing for hydration, looking at blood, subjective ratings of thirst, and water in, water out. So you have the target here, which was 3.2 liters of total fluid intake. This particular pilot had 1.5 liters, and that led to a zero balance. So what we learned from the hydration study is that water needs would be higher than 1.5 liters for this person. We had to encourage water intake regardless of thirst, because in high altitude, the needs are much higher than the thirst that you feel subjectively. So we had to keep reminding them to drink. So gearing up to the Round the World, we took these learnings from the simulations, and we had our final menu, which was a 3-day cycle menu, 3,000 to 3,500 calories. This was on board, but our target was still 2,300 to 2,500. Up to 11 meals and snacks, including 1 hot meal a day, 1.5 to 2.5 liters, depending on the pilot, of water per day, and 1 liter of sports drink. In terms of composition, we got to a macronutrient composition of 53% carbs, 15% protein, and 32% fat, which we were happy with. And we were going to follow up in the real situation of the Round the World later on. So if we look at the menu, this is what we proposed as one day. So the pilot would have a breakfast as you would in real life, with and breakfast cereals, nutrition supplements for the protein. This was ascending to 3,500 meters. Above 3,500, he would have small meals, the soups, the enriched soups, carbohydrate-rich meals. And descending from 3,500, again, protein for the recovery phase. The last but not least part of our involvement with Solar Impulse was logistics, because the plane was going to be stopping in 14 different places. And we had to make sure that the food was not only prepared and well packaged, but also that it was delivered in a safe way. So it was a big challenge as well to make sure that they had their food on time. I personally was on site to ensure that the safety and delivery of the food, as well as the nutritional recommendations that I would brief the pilot with right before he would take the plane, and monitor the pilot's health and food intake at the end of the flight to have a feedback for the next flight again. On July 24th, 2016, Solar Impulse completed their round the world using zero fuel and flying around the world, flying over very important landmarks such as the Statue of Liberty, the Egyptian pyramids, the Burmese temples, and the San Francisco Bridge. Zero fuel. The only fuel was the fuel inside the cockpit, the food of the pilot, the food that was part of their daily life and that accompanied them in their message spreading, the message of sustainability. And we're proud to be part of that. And this is why I say nutrition should be part of the future, however we shape it. And it goes back to what you were saying, Dr. Huela, about our role in sustainability. As we all know, there's no great project without a great team behind it. So this is not the work of one person. This is the work of a whole team at the Nestlé Research Center. We have an amazing experimental kitchen and an amazing metabolic unit as well that executed all the nutritional assessments. And I would like to thank them. And I would like to thank my husband, who happens to be the engineer or the cockpit designer, and who helped me a lot in our interaction with Solar Impulse. And you can see this is the little product of the of the project. There's no baby who knows more about solar airplanes that I know, because he's been in the Mission Control Center and he's participated very actively to this project. I'd like to thank you for your attention and for inviting me again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Cassis. Any questions? No. Okay.
I have two questions.
Yes.
If I may,
Ahmed, microphone.
associated with the height or the altitude of the plane, it also corresponds to the day-night cycle. They would reach the height of their journey at dinner time. Can you take anything from the daily pattern in terms of the nutrition as well as your assumptions of the altitude? That's the first question that we might benefit from. The other is more theoretical, and that is there was a movie called The Martian, where a man was left on the planet Mars. From your perspective as a research scientist, how plausible is all of that?
There are two wonderful questions, I have to say. For the first part, it's very interesting you mentioned that, because this is the reason why we were interested in looking at the circadian rhythm during the simulations. Now, unfortunately, we were not able to look at the circadian rhythm during the round the world. But what was interesting during the simulations is that the patterns, so the melatonin and cortisol patterns, did not change. So the pilot, at least for 3 days that we know, did not change circadian rhythm. So we know that food, depending on the composition, might affect hormones that are involved in the circadian rhythm. And for us, in this specific context, we did not see that. And we were happy that the circadian rhythm of these pilots was not perturbed. I can't comment on the actual reality, so when the plane was in the air, but I would assume that from what we know in the literature, there is an effect of nutrition. On the ground, there was no effect of nutrition on the circadian rhythm. Does that answer your question? And for the second question, I mean, I watched this movie and I was very, I related in a way, because it's something that, it's an unknown. This person had to make, to stay alive, basically, with what was around him. And realistic, after doing this project, I would say nothing is not realistic. It's always something that you have to try, because nothing is impossible. And growing matter from organic matter, I would say, is pretty plausible for me. So when I watched the movie, it kind of talked to me in a way that, yes, it could be possible. It's not probably tomorrow that it's going to happen, but sure, this is what experimentation is about in the end. Yes?
Could you also talk about how this translates into like something that's marketable to, let's say, solo pilots that are going around the world trips or other, commercial applications?
Yeah.
Or is this kind of a standalone project, case study project?
No.
Would you see it to be translated into the market?
Of course, this project started as a standalone project with a clear objective to support the pilots nutritionally. However, with everything that we've learned from this project, we could get inspired for commercial applications. And not in a sense, I'm not talking about commercial flights, because in a commercial cabin, you don't have the problem of pressure, you don't have the problem of cold. So it's not as, except for maybe digestive issues. What we can think about here is muscle loss. Muscle loss is very common, whether it's in the elderly. They are subjected to muscle loss, partly because they don't move enough. They don't. Physical activity is very limited, or it's a physiological. It's just a physiological stage, exactly. So we can think about the elderly and how can we find nutritional solutions, high energy density, high protein density, all of these concepts, even the packaging, easy to use for the elderly who can't use their hands very well. So this is one of the applications. The other application, of course, is for high altitude sports, because or expeditions that could be also something we can think about.
Yes, thank you. Comparing the tree to the post, what effect does that have on the pilots? And what extent the nutrition helps reduce that effect?
Exactly. So I can partly answer the question because the data is still in the analysis stage. But what we know from what we have today is that in terms of weight loss, and we were very happy to see this, the pilot, one of the pilots, let's say, lost only 1 kilo in a flight of 4.5 days. So for us, this is a success because when you look in the literature, we're talking about 4 or 5 kilos loss in this amount of time on the mountain, of course, not in the. So for us, this is a success. Also, hydration. We have good ratings of hydration around the world, and good fluid intake as well.
And muscles?
We were not able to look at muscles because it requires isotope methodology to look into muscle loss, and this we were not able to set up on the plane, unfortunately. But the pilots were, if there's not a lot of weight loss, that also means that you might not have a lot of muscle loss because it's usually 60% muscle loss. I think the time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Dean Nahla Hwalla, who will be speaking about the Mediterranean diet as not only a healthy diet, but also a sustainable cultural heritage. Thank you.
Thank you, Sibel. What I will try to present to you today is that what we have been eating a long time ago and we have changed is really sustainable and is really healthy. So I will start by telling you that the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 of them that were recently published, they call for sustainable food consumption. We have to start thinking about our food consumption to be sustainable. Our food security, which is a global agenda and mostly a regional agenda, requires sustainable food consumption. The Mediterranean diet now all over the world is being revitalized as a sustainable diet. And we need policies and programs in our countries in order to reach sustainable food consumption and in order to reach food security. These are the Sustainable Development Goals, and I can say many, many of them are goals that are related to sustainable food consumption. And the Mediterranean diet is an example of a sustainable diet. What is a sustainable diet? I think most of us have been used to speaking about a healthy diet, and what I'm presenting here is not only healthy, but also sustainable. What is a sustainable diet? By definition of FAO, a sustainable diet is a diet that is environmentally low environmental impact. It contributes to food and nutrition security and to healthy life of the present and future generations. Sustainable diets are protective and respectful of biodiversity. And of the ecosystem. They are culturally acceptable. They are accessible, economically fair and affordable, nutritionally adequate, safe and healthy, while optimizing natural and human resources. Now, with this definition, the 6 out of the 17 goals that are the Sustainable Development Goals by the UN, they are related to sustainable diets and sustainable food consumption. These goals are mostly goal number 12, which is ensure sustainable consumption and production pattern, end hunger, ensure availability and sustainable management of water, ensure healthy lives and well-being, and protect and restore and promote sustainable use of ecosystems. So sustainable diets, in summary, present an opportunity for us to advance commitments to a sustainable development, mitigate food insecurity, promote health and wellness, and protect the environment and address climate change. An important dynamic that has been going on for some time is that in studying or addressing food security, we always spoke and talked about how do we improve production. Production is dealt with by the agriculture people, and their numbers depend from one country to another, and they vary. They vary from 10 to 15% depending on the country. The consumers are the majority of the people. And in addressing food security, this group, which is the majority of the population, has not been dealt with efficiently. And this is why we have been hearing about nutrition-directed or nutrition-motivated agriculture. So the role of nutrition comes here extremely important in promoting sustainable diets, and these sustainable diets that are consumed by the consumer would be driver of agriculture. So the current consumption is unsustainable. What is wrong with what we do? We consume diets that are high in energy, they have high environmental impact, they are increasing obesity and contributing to the increased rates of obesity and non-communicable diseases. We have still micronutrient deficiency, although some people are fat, and there are increased incidence of hunger. So there is a need for sustainable food consumption in order to address these issues. So changes are required. Where are the changes required? The changes are required in agriculture for sustainable agriculture production and supply chain. In the environment, lower water consumption. For the environment, it's important that the water is becoming scarce. Environment, water consumption, water loss, food loss, energy use, blue water footprint, and carbon dioxide emissions. We need to change our food processing to have safe food, and socioeconomic development to make the food affordable. So nutrition and sustainable food consumption in the MENA region is one of the issues that we will be discussing today. In July 2016 in Milan, the world community convened to revitalize the Mediterranean diet as a form of a healthy dietary pattern and as a form of a sustainable diet. What is a Mediterranean diet? Everybody would ask, is this one diet? No. The Mediterranean diet, there is no single definition for a Mediterranean diet. There are variations of Mediterranean diets, but they have common characteristics, and these common characteristics are olive oil, fruits and vegetables, cereals, the mostly unrefined cereals, legumes, nuts, moderate amounts of fish and dairy, low quantities of meat and meat products, and wine in moderation if culturally acceptable. So the Mediterranean diet has been inscribed recently in 2010 in the UNESCO representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. The importance of the Mediterranean diets lies not only in its specific foods and nutrients, but in the way in which its characteristic foods are produced, are cooked, and are consumed. Is the Mediterranean diet healthy? There is compelling research and evidence that shows that a Mediterranean diet is really a good diet, and a diet that can address diseases. So there is evidence that the diseases of non-communicable diseases can be, the Mediterranean diet can be helpful. First, if you look at the right side, it is when you have increased risk, and if you look at the left side, it is reduced risk, and these are the studies. A meta-analysis of all the studies done show that if you increase intake of the Mediterranean diet with 2-point increase, you would have the risk of all-cause mortality will decrease. So this is an effect of the Mediterranean diet on all-cause mortality. This is an effect also, the same thing, increased risk and decreased risk. The studies are showing that it is associated with decrease in mortality if the person adheres, decrease in cardiovascular diseases if we adhere to a Mediterranean diet. It also shows that the cancer also decreases if we adhere to the Mediterranean diet. As you see, all the arrows are on the left side. This is also in the case for the myocardial infarction, stroke, and cardiovascular diseases. And this is a comparison between a controlled diet, the normal diet, a Mediterranean diet with nuts, and a Mediterranean diet with olive oil. And you can see the influence of this diet on the hazards of cardiovascular death. Breast cancer, this is also evidence showing that this is the difference between a controlled diet, Mediterranean diet with nuts, and Mediterranean diet with olive oil, showing that the Mediterranean diet decreases the risk of breast cancer. So the Mediterranean diet also has been shown to decrease diabetes, and if you look at the hazard ratio but by adherence to the Mediterranean diet, you can see that low adherence is 1. If there is medium adherence, there is a decrease, and if there is high adherence, there is a higher decrease in diabetes. So in conclusion, by adhering to the Mediterranean diet, we can decrease all-risk mortality, risk of cardiovascular disease mortality, decrease risk of occurrence and mortality of cancer, and decrease risk of type 2 diabetes. So provided the evidence for this is also the studies that show an decreased incidence of cardiovascular disease by 30% and decreased incidence of breast cancer by 40 to 60% if the Mediterranean diet is followed versus comparison with the low-fat diet, which everybody really follows. These are the countries that, these are the countries that Spain, Marseille, Italy, and Greece have been promoting the Mediterranean diet, and they have met in Milan for this purpose. They have also established a pyramid in which they identified the foods that are to be taken every day, every meal, every day, and every week, and I'm not going to elaborate on this. And what about our consumption? What did we do? What research we did in order to see what is the diet that we consume and whether it is close to the Mediterranean diet or not. These are the diets that we have established in our population. And there is the traditional Lebanese, and we can see that the traditional Lebanese is the closest to the Mediterranean diet. But in our population, there are people following the Western diet, the prudent diet, and the fish and alcohol diet, very small proportion, the fish and alcohol diet. Now, in looking at these patterns, we divided the patterns, and we looked at whether people following these patterns are suffering from disease. And we could show in our studies, and they were published, that a pattern, adherence of the Lebanese to a Western pattern, you can see the green is the prudent, the violet is the Lebanese, and the red is the Western. This is the prudent. This is the odds of having hyperglycemia. On the left side, the odds of having high glucose levels. So the prudent, you can see that it's fine. The Lebanese, it's fine. And the Western, this is the increase, the adherence to a Western dietary pattern resulting in the odds of having hyperglycemia is also clear. If we look at the association with the metabolic syndrome, you can see that the prudent is also the adherence, it does not increase metabolic syndrome. Adherence to the Lebanese slightly higher. Adherence to the Western increased the odds of having metabolic syndrome in the people that were studied. Type 2 diabetes, you can see that the Western pattern had increased odds of type 2 diabetes by more than 3-fold. And the fast food pattern increased the odds of type 2 diabetes by 2-fold, and the Lebanese traditional pattern decreased the odds of having diabetes by 2-fold. So therefore, the Lebanese traditional diet seems to be a protective diet against non-communicable diseases. We have the Western style diet and we have the Lebanese diet, and the Western was shown to be related to diseases. Now I bring you to the sustainability aspect. This is the traditional, and this traditional diet shares a lot of components with the Mediterranean diet. Now this slide is important because it is the basis of how do we define our diet. If you look at the left side of this curve, it is less healthy. The right side is more healthy and less healthy. If you look at the top, is more sustainable. If you look at the bottom, it is less sustainable. So where do we want our food to be? Is to be healthy, it's to be on the right and on the top. So this is the group of foods that should be consumed in order to be healthy and sustainable. If you look at the components of these foods, you will find that these components of the foods that are healthy and sustainable, if you look at them, you can see that they include the components of the Mediterranean diet. And they include the components of consumption of our traditional diet. So the Mediterranean diet falls here. Many of its components are healthy, are sustainable, and some of the components are less sustainable, like the fish, and I'm not going to dwell on this. And basically, they are more healthy, and many of them are more sustainable. And we are here in this consumption. These are actual consumption pattern of our Lebanese population. This is the Lebanese traditional and Mediterranean diet: fruits, vegetables, legumes, olive oil, eggs, grains, and cereals, and dairy and sweets. The sustainable foods are here, so that our foods could be regarded as sustainable. We don't have data on these foods in terms of whether they are protective and healthy. The world policies promoting sustainable diet has been looked into, and the world has been looking into the sustainability of food consumption. So they have revisited their existing food-based dietary guidelines to include sustainability. What did they do? We looked at various countries, and we looked at the guidelines. And you can see that this is a busy slide, but in essence, most countries recommend lower salt consumption, higher fruit and vegetable consumption, lower fat consumption. The least common message is lowering of meat consumption. This is a message that really needs to go further, because meat consumption is not one of the components of a sustainable diet. Germany, Brazil, and Sweden included sustainability in their guidelines for their public. All of them mention environmental factors in their main messages. All of them mention advantages of plant-based diets for health and environment. Except Qatar, all of them speak about high environmental impact of meat and of the need to moderate food consumption high in fat, salt, and sugar. Other countries discussed the aspects, made attempts, but governmental endorsement did not happen. Some countries have quasi-official guidelines, and these are other Nordic countries: Netherlands, France, UK, and Estonia. So the way forward is that countries have already developed over the years. Many countries of our region have developed food-based dietary guidelines, including us, including the Lebanese food-based dietary guidelines. However, these food-based dietary guidelines were based on our healthy concept of a diet. These guidelines did not incorporate sustainability, and we should revisit all of these guidelines in order to incorporate sustainability and in order to call them sustainable food-based dietary guidelines. How do we do that? We have a food-based dietary guideline. We need to examine this food-based dietary guideline, which is the Lebanese one, developed by this faculty. And we probably need to, as you can see, decrease, increase, and make changes to it according to sustainability. AUB recently officially endorsed the call for action on revitalization of the Mediterranean diet, and you can see here it's one of the institutions that have endorsed the Mediterranean diet as a sustainable and healthy diet. So research is needed in many areas. in all areas of agriculture, environment, nutrition, and food, social, economic dimensions. And we need to develop what is a sustainability index? How can we measure sustainability? We can also conclude that a Mediterranean diet is nutritionally adequate. It is accessible and affordable. It is our normal diet. It is environmentally sustainable, and it is culturally acceptable. It is our traditional diet. So the take-home message for all of us is that more consumption of plant-based foods, less consumption of red meat and processed meat. And the Mediterranean diet has many components that enable it to be considered as a model for sustainable food-based dietary guidelines. What is good for you is also good for your planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hwalla. Any questions to Dr. Hwalla?
You were saying that one of the least common messages was the decreasing meat in diet or promoting more vegetarianism, I guess. Have you the crisis that I heard in the news about the meat production and the closure and some of that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I'd like to invite you to on food security, where meat is the main component of that presentation, and the analysis of our consumption and what is recommended and how much would we gain in terms of water and climate change if we change our ways of consuming meat. So it is correct. I mean, this is one aspect. This is why I kept it to the other presentation. It's food security that really would not be achieved without really relooking at our consumption of meat.
Just a small detail. You had soybean in the lower right quadrant, and just can you talk about why that soybean is less sustainable but still healthy?
It is healthy, but it's not sustainable because it consumes a lot of water. It is a sustainable diet, but maybe you need some kind of, we do not say that you should not eat animal products at all. But a vegetarian diet misses some of the nutrients if it is 100% vegetarian. So this is why it is sustainable, but maybe not healthy. 100%, but maybe 90%. Yes, Amira.
I recently looked at obesity rates in children around the world and the MENA region, and it was interesting for me to see that Greece and Italy had a very high rate of obesity in children. So I was just wondering, are we losing the Mediterranean diet, or is the Mediterranean diet not as healthy as we think it is? What do you think is the cause?
When we looked at the patterns, what are people eating? I mean, when in combination and not isolated foods and so on, we have a large percentage of our young people, especially the adolescents, are moving towards the Western. And this is why I'm focusing that although we found that no impact of the traditional versus the prudent diet, however, the Western was clear in terms of its influence on obesity, on diabetes, on heart disease, and myocardial infarction too.
And do you know if this applies to Italy and Greece, which are the Mediterranean diet? It's the same kind of pattern that's happening?
Yes, of course. I mean, this is why they are the ones, the leaders actually, in pushing for change in the food consumption. Any other questions? Sulinda, ما في شيء? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Shadi Saleh. Dr. Shadi Saleh is Associate Vice President for Health Affairs and Professor of Health Systems and Financing at AUB. Dr. Saleh currently leads the operationalization of AUB's vision on health, Health 2025, part of which is establishing a global health institute. In his previous role as chairperson of the Health Management and Policy Department at the Faculty of Health Sciences at AUB, he founded the Collaborative for Leadership and Innovations in Health Systems, CLI, and the Healthcare Leadership Academy, HLA. Prior to joining AUB, Dr. Saleh served as a professor of healthcare finance at the State University of New York at Albany, where he also served as director of certificate programs. Dr. Saleh's areas of expertise are in healthcare financing policy and reform, economic evaluations of innovative healthcare interventions, and building a business case for quality and healthcare access and equity. He has published over 50 peer-reviewed papers and commissioned reports and serves on the editorial boards of leading health systems journals. He serves as a World Bank, WHO, and UN advisor for healthcare financing policy and system strengthening projects. Dr. Saleh holds a PhD in health policy, minor in healthcare finance, from the University of Iowa, and an MPH, Health Services Administration, and a BS from AUB. Dr. Saleh will present how the nutrition, obesity, and related diseases, the NORD program at AUB, is a key component in the university's Health 2025 vision. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Saleh.
Good morning, everyone. I convey to you the regards of Executive Vice President Sayegh, who had an urgent issue. So I'm stuck with, I will formally launch this very exciting program. And I hope that the fly incident wouldn't happen with me as it did relating to the mic. So anyways, congratulations to FAFS on its long history of serving AUB, the region, Lebanon, the region and beyond, as well as on its exquisite leadership. Dr. Dean Hawalla, who is not only a wonderful scientist, but a great leader and a role model for many of us at AUB and beyond. So I'm here today to share with you a very exciting vision that we at AUB have launched earlier this year in April, and to talk to you a little bit about a very interesting program that we would be launching as part of our Global Health Initiative. The starting point of our Health 2025 vision was realizing that there are many areas of strength within AUB, specifically within the healthcare field. So if we're talking about our core health units, we're talking about the AUB Medical Center, we're talking about our Faculty of Medicine, our Faculty of Public Health, which is my home unit. We will change its name very soon. The Faculty of Agriculture and Food Sciences, my second home, and our School of Nursing. So it was very clear to us that these are specific areas of strength that, one, we need to capitalize on them to increase our impact, our healthcare footprint, both in the region and beyond, and secondly, to have those units work together more closely. And now I'm going to talk a little bit to you about how we're doing that. So that was sort of the preamble of a presidential initiative that was announced as part of the president's inauguration speech in January, where he announced that AUB will start two things. The first is establishing the first health sciences campus in the region, and also one of the first in the global south, and here is the fly again. And then the second is establishing a global health center or a global health institute. And for us today, what's relevant is that component, which is the Global Health Institute. The global health in general is becoming less and less of a local problem and more of a global problem. So if you think about the stuff that was discussed today, when you're talking about nutrition, if we're talking about the Zika virus, if we're talking about infectious disease, non-communicable disease, health is becoming global by its essence. And that's why our initial thinking was there is a huge need for this part of the universe, the global south, to have a global health institute that would be a reference center. And if you look, and this is, I think, feed some of what has been discussed. If you look at the problems, the major health challenges, most of those major health challenges are happening in the global south. Whether it's issues related to communicable maternal nutritional diseases, or whether it's issues related to non-communicable diseases. So you see that this part of the world, this is where most of the problems are happening. However, if we think about the solutions that have been proposed and adopted, most of these solutions are coming from entities, universities, centers that are in the north. Okay, whereas the people who are suffering from those problems, they're not having the opportunity to do the information exchange, the knowledge exchange, or even the knowledge generation. And hopefully, that is what we will try to change with GHI, with the Global Health Institute. This is our mission and our vision, and in summary, to save you from reading all of this, is that we want GHI at AUB to be a leader, a global leader when it comes to health, and a global partner on health. And hopefully with the efforts of this program and other programs, we will achieve that. So far, and this has been, I'm talking to you about stuff that has been going on since April of this year. So we're only like 6 or 7 years, sort of, 7 months old. It's light years and they feel like 7 years. So we have been able to launch formally one program. The other program is in process, and now we're launching NORD. So the first program is on refugee health. I would assume that you all agree that we are at the heart of the storm, the refugee storm, and it's time for an academic institution to serve as a hub. And I'm glad to have the co-director of the program, Dr. Fuad, from the Faculty of Health Sciences, be with us. We have other co-directors, one from the FAFS and another one from the Faculty of Medicine, Drs. Muna Osman and Lamis Jum'a. The other program that we have already launched is the program on conflict medicine. So in this program, we will be discussing war wounds, their effects on society, as well as from a clinical standpoint. And again, the program has been launched in May 5, in collaboration with Doctors Without Borders, and we're very happy about the progress of the program. And then the highlight of my presentation and my extreme joy being with you is that today would be the formal launch of our third program, which is on nutrition, obesity, and related diseases. I feel awkward talking about this program in the presence of our nutrition gurus, but I will try my best to do it. So correct me if I'm wrong, nutrition people. So the rationale of our program is that, the NORD program, is that many countries in the Middle East, in the MENA region, our regions, are currently witnessing a double burden of malnutrition, which is the issue of the second one, okay, thank you, which is the coexistence of surging rates and obesity and at the same time related diseases. So there are major needs when it comes to nutritional status, to dietary intake assessments. There is currently a lack of information on effective evidence-based nutrition intervention, and there is a gap between nutrition sciences and public health policy. And this is very, very important. So these three things and others, these are major challenges that are facing not only Lebanon, not only the region, many countries in the world, especially in the global south, in order to improve the whole nutritional status and the health population on the region. So that was the main rationale why we are so excited about having that program. And that is why the individual who's leading that program is the same individual who is leading the FAFS at this point, who is a recognized leader when it comes to nutrition. So we are super happy that Dr. Nahal Hawalla is leading this program, and we're super happy that the ladies who are sitting behind her are very active players within the program itself. So this is why we started NORD, and in the early times we had considerable thinking about what NORD would do. And what's clear for us is that there were very clear goals that we had to achieve as a program. We had to be more proactive in conducting needs assessment as related to nutritional status and dietary intake. Something that I need to mention is that the thing that is unique about the NORD program is that we are not presenting this as a FAFS initiative. We're not presenting conflict medicine as a School of Medicine program. We are presenting these as an AUB programs with full collaboration between all of the units. So this is very key for us to keep in mind that we want to work together as AUB units. So again, to the goals, to conducting the needs assessment, to addressing the hidden hunger and the double burden of malnutrition, to develop the whole issue of evidence-based and culturally sensitive nutrition intervention. And this is very important. The fourth one on this slide is to create that platform that all of us would need for discussing all of these interventions and hopefully moving them forward. In addition, we want to serve as a liaison, which I think that both the directors and the key experts on the program have done so well. And lastly, being an academic institution, we want to be able to, one, to disseminate the scientific information, but more importantly, hopefully move that into policies, into practices, and so on and so forth. So I think I had 15 minutes. I think I finished earlier. So people are always happy when I finish it, especially that I saw the food out there and it looks very interesting. So for us, we are super happy to add the Global Health Initiative, the Global Health Institute, to have NORD be part of that Health 2025 vision of the university and be part of how we will enhance the health impact of this university. So thank you, Dean Hualla. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, Dr. Saleh. Any questions to Dr. Saleh? No? Okay. So now we will have a coffee break and we will reconvene as scheduled at 1 p.m. So it would be much appreciated if everyone could take his seats by this time to ensure we stay on schedule. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Our last topic for today is the food safety awareness session in collaboration with Roadster Diner, which will be presented by Ms. Reem Hamze. Reem Hamze received both her BS degree in nutrition and dietetics and MS in food technology from AUB. She has been working as a food safety consultant, as well as an instructor and research assistant at the Faculty of Agricultural and Food Science at AUB. Her work includes teaching, research, and consultations in the field of food microbiology and food safety. Reem is also a member of the executive committee in the Lebanese Association for Food Safety, the FAFS, and a member of the International Association for Food Protection, IAFP. In her presentation today, Ms. Hamze will describe the best food safety practices at home and will shed the light on common misconceptions. Before we begin the session, our graduate, Ms. Jana Majzoub, and who is the Quality and Food Safety Manager at Roadster Diner, and her colleague, Ms. Rita Sati, who is the Senior Marketing Specialist at Roadster Diner, would like to tell you a few words about the collaboration between Roadster Diner and the Nutrition and Food Science Department. Ladies?
Good afternoon. We at Roadster Diner have been collaborating with AUB for the past year concerning raising awareness on food safety at home. And this has been proven success thus far. We hope you enjoy today's workshop, and that's going to be presented by Ms. Reem Hamze, and I will leave the floor to her. Thank you, Reem.
Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. So today I'm going to be talking about food safety at home. Wait, do we need food safety at home? We're eating at home. It's completely safe. I can never get sick if I eat my mom's food. I hear that a lot, and it's basically a myth. It's not true. You can get sick if you consume food prepared at home, if not done properly. So today I'm going to be talking about the different stages in food preparation from the moment you purchase the food items up until you serve it on your plate. Okay? So food safety is really important outside our homes and inside our home. And if we do not implement food safety guidelines that I'm going to be talking about, you really can get sick from consuming your mom's food that's been sitting at room temperatures for the whole day. So To prevent that, I'm going to discuss these 5 steps and what needs to be done at each to prevent such a scenario. So first, I'm going to be talking about shopping. So the moment you purchase the food from the supermarket, it becomes your responsibility. The way you handle the food will affect its safety and quality once you present it and process it. Okay? So thus, you need to pick them carefully. First, if I'm in a supermarket and I need to buy eggs, of course you're going to tell me I'm not going to buy cracked eggs. All right, but where do you actually purchase them from? They need to be refrigerated. How many of you go into the supermarket and find the eggs in the refrigerated section? Very few of you. So you need to make sure of that. Chilled or frozen foods that have been left out of the refrigerator. Now, a lot of people pick their frozen peas and then they decide, no, I don't need them. They don't place them back in the fridge. You come and pick them out. Don't do that, okay? So basically what happens is the peas are thawed and then refrozen again. Moldy products. And I see a lot of people actually doing this. Of course, you're not going to buy a moldy product, but if you see a basket of strawberries and one of the strawberries is moldy, a lot of people would say, it's fine, I'll just remove that one piece and eat the rest. It's not moldy, and that's, again, wrong. So if you see any moldy product, never buy it. Do not purchase it, okay? Frozen packages containing ice crystals. And you actually see this in seafood. If you're buying shrimps or fish fillets, if you see like water crystals in the package, and you can actually feel them, they're icy and hard to touch. That means that your product have been thawed and refrozen again. What does that mean? We had temperature fluctuations. The bacteria, your product actually thawed. The bacteria that's present there had the time to multiply, and then it froze back again, okay? So if you see a product containing ice crystals, stay away from them. Of course, don't buy dented, swollen, or bulged cans, okay? And you need always to check the expiry date. Now, pay attention. A lot of supermarkets usually put them as an offer, okay? Get 3 for the price of 2. So when this is the case, always check the expiry date, because it means it's almost reaching its expiry date, okay? Yeah. Now, you need to take special care when you're dealing with these food items. And these are what we call high-risk foods. We have meat, poultry, fish, dairy products, cold cuts, and ready-to-eat salads. Now, when everyone asks me if I need to buy chicken or if I need to go buy meat from the supermarket, how will I be able to know if what I'm getting is fresh or not? How would you be able to know? You can actually guess, okay? There are simple steps that you can check and do in order to know if your product is fresh. So when we're talking about chicken, you need to do these couple of tests. The first thing, you need to touch the piece of chicken, okay? It's covered, I know. It's even better. You don't get your hand contaminated. So once you touch the piece of meat, if the flesh pops up directly after you touch it, that means it's fresh, okay? Then you need to check the color of the meat. If you have any discoloration on it, that means it's not fresh, okay? And finally, the odor. If it have a very pungent odor, also it means that piece of chicken is old. For fish, basically, I think everyone knows this test. You need to check and look at the eyes. If the eyes are clear, that means that the fish is fresh. If they are cloudy, as seen above here, that means that the fish is old. Also the smell, also the texture experiment that we talked about. Now, some fish, not all types of fish, you can do the cloudy eye. Some types of fish, they'll have a cloudy fish. So you have to look for the other attributes, the texture, the smell, okay, and the gills. The same for the meat, same texture experiment. You need to press it. If the flesh springs up, that means it's fresh. If it has any discoloration, that means it's not, okay? And you can actually see from the picture. The first one here is fresh, and this is not. So, as a sum up of your shopping trip, what should you get first? First of all, you get non-food items, and these are detergents, soaps, liquids, whatever. Then you get your dry food, rice, beverages, fruits and veggies, frozen foods. Then you purchase refrigerated food just before you are about to leave the supermarket. Why is that? So that in order to keep the temperatures of your food items safe, okay? And I'm gonna be talking more about the temperatures in my next slides. So, you need to keep in mind that once you are leaving the supermarket, you should always place your raw food in a separate bag. And what supermarkets usually do is they pack all refrigerated items in one bag. That is, meats, raw meats, cheeses, milk, they all put them in the same bag because to them, everything is going into the fridge. Well, you should pay attention for that. Always keep your raw food in a separate bag. Do not mix it even with the other refrigerated items, okay? Why is that again? To prevent cross-contamination, okay? Because of the liquids in the raw food. And if you're transporting them, you need to transport them directly home, directly refrigerate them. And if your trip is more than 2 hours, you need to take these small transporting bags, okay? All right, so we got the food, we transported them home safely with the required time, and then we come to the part of the cleaning. Now, all of us clean at our homes. We all do that. However, if we do not clean properly and frequently, then we do have serious issues, okay? So we need, before we produce anything or start making our food, we need to wash our hands, and we do have the 20-second rule. And you can easily know, you're not gonna count 20 seconds. What you can do is you can sing the happy birthday song. That is 20 seconds. All right, you need to wash your hands before and after you prepare your food or handle any type of food. You need to wash all your fruits and vegetables properly. And that's the second most asked question people ask me. How do I wash my fruits and vegetables? Simply, you can wash them with water and salt. Water, salt, and vinegar, okay? All right, so water, salt, and vinegar is the safest thing to do. All right, now also people ask me how much should I clean my refrigerator? You should clean your refrigerator at least once per week. Okay, and again, if you do not want to put chemicals, you wash your fridge with chemicals, that is the normal detergent and bleach. You can use, again, vinegar, okay? And you can use the white vinegar because the smell is less pungent. Now we move to the storage of your food products. If food is not stored properly, again, it's party time for the bacteria. It's gonna grow, it's gonna multiply, it's gonna do whatever you want underneath your nose without you knowing. Sorry. So, your fridges should be at a temperature less than 5 degrees Celsius, usually from 1 to 5. You should not overpack your fridge. Do not put just everything in, because then the air will not circulate, and then it will not do its job. Don't put very hot food items. Let's say you cooked a stew, and you need to let it cool down before you actually put it in the fridge. But please make sure not to exceed the 2 hours rule. And you should always store raw foods where? At the bottom shelf. Why is that? In order to avoid cross-contamination, which is the dripping of the juices of the raw meat into your ready-to-eat foods. So, you should place your meat, poultry, and fish in the coldest part of the refrigerator towards the end. You should store your eggs. Where should you store your eggs? It's not the door of the refrigerator, even though the place. Yeah, she exactly. She knew I wanted that answer. So the fridges, the design of the fridges is to locate your eggs in the door of the fridge, but that's not what we recommend. Eggs should always be stored inside the fridge because at the door, basically, you open and close the door, open and close. We have temperature fluctuations, and that's not recommended because eggs are high-risk foods, okay? Do not keep cooked foods for more than 3 days. So you cooked your stew. On the third day, it should be discarded. Bye-bye. Remove it. Don't eat it, okay? So the fridge layout. Now, bear with me a little bit. So the first on the top shelf, it should contain the ready-to-eat foods, and that is agreed on. The last here in the at the bottom shelf, we have the unwashed fruits and vegetables, the drawers, okay? Now, probably at home, you will not have this scenario, okay? You're not gonna have raw fish, raw chicken, and raw meat at the same time, okay? So as a rule of thumb, all raw foods go at the bottom shelf. If, however, you do have, at the same time, raw fish, raw beef, and raw poultry, they need to be put in this order, okay? And all other ingredients, food items that are ready to eat, needs to be at the top, okay? Now, if you ask me, if I wash my fruits and vegetables, where do I place them? Where do they go? They go at the top shelves, okay? Whatever it is, underneath, they shouldn't be under the raw meat. So, the same is for the freezer. Your freezer should be maintained at a temperature of minus 18 degrees Celsius. And most of the fridges nowadays do have a thermometer, so you will be able to know the temperature. You should store veggies on top, then fish, beef, ground meat, and poultry. Veggies on top because these are processed, they are clean, there is no further processing for them, okay? They're not like the previous slide, unwashed, okay? So, the general storage tips, you should always place newer items at the back. So this happens when you're buying canned food. If you buy canned food of beans, the new one goes back and the older one moves forward. So this is what we call first in, first out, all right? When a food item is taken out of its original container, you need first to wash it. And I'm going to give you an example about that. And you need to make sure that the container is airtight. The example is, a lot of people do store the dry food items, such as wheat, flour, milk, or any kind of cereals. They store them in airtight packages. And that is true. But when the package is almost full, is almost empty, they just refill it again. And that is not recommended. What happens is after your container is empty or near empty, you need to wash it, dry it, sanitize it, and then use it again. So your food should be stored in dark and dry area. So basically, it's your kitchen cabinet. And dry foods should never be stored directly on the floor. Okay, and we get this in industries where they place their flour bags directly on the floor because they do not have the space, okay? Cooking. So the way you cook your food is very, very important, okay? Because at this step, you will be able to at least decrease whatever bacteria you have, if you have bacteria in your food. Because inadequate cooking is a common cause of food poisoning. So, how do you cook meats? How do you know that your food is properly cooked? In a restaurant, you will see them using a what? A thermometer. At home, I will never ask you to go every time you want to cook a roast beef or whatever, to go and check the temperature of your food that you're preparing. So again, very easy test that you can do. You can, for the chicken and for the fish, it needs to be flaky once it's cooked, okay? So using the knife and fork, if it directly splits, that means it's cooked properly, okay? If it does not, that means it requires further cooking. Now, another question, another important thing to discuss is, can I order my burger medium rare? Can I order it not very well done? The answer is completely no. You can do such a thing with steaks. You can order them medium, because usually what happens with the steaks, the bacteria is present on the surface of the piece of meat. So once you put it on the grill, it kills them, okay? The bacteria that's on the surface. Now, what happens with burgers, burgers are minced meat. So everything is mixed up. So you can never, ever order your burger not very well done cooked, all right? Chilling. So bacteria spreads fastest at room temperature, and I think everyone know the term danger zone. So what is the danger zone? It's the temperatures between 5 and 63. Here. So this is basically my attempt to draw a thermometer. So here, between 5 degrees Celsius and 63 degrees Celsius, it's what is known as the danger zone. In this area, the bacteria grow rapidly, okay? It's the optimal conditions for the bacteria to grow. So we cannot place food items or any cooked food at room temperature, because room temperature is what? Included in the danger zone. More than 2 hours. So the maximum time that is allowed for the food to stay at this zone is a maximum of 2 hours, and usually in summer it's less. Then you have the cold zone over here, which is what? Your refrigerator, okay? So here, it's a cold zone. You can store your foods. How many days? A maximum of 3 days. Below that, it's the freezer zone, okay? So here you can freeze your food. And do we kill bacteria in the freezer? No, okay? Bacteria does not die inside the fridge. It do not die, okay? It's basically putting them in a dormant phase. What kills bacteria is here, cooking your food at high temperatures, okay? So if you cook your food for more than 63 degrees Celsius, you're making sure that you're killing the majority of whatever bacteria is present in your food. Oh, we're almost done. So you place your food products inside the fridge, inside the freezer, but then you have to use them. So what are the safe and recommended methods for thawing your food? The first is, and the most recommended, it's inside your fridge. Put it just 1 day ahead at the lower shelf, at the bottom shelf, and let it defrost. Then the second thing, it's under running cold water. Just open the tap on it. And 3, in the microwave. However, if you decide to use the microwave to defrost your food, you need to make sure to cook it directly afterwards. Because when you are defrosting it in the microwave, some of the food will actually start cooked. Some of the food will actually be cooked. So directly, you need to complete cooking the piece that you thawed. You need to make sure never to refreeze thawed food, and whenever you're defrosting it inside the fridge overnight, as we said, you need to put it inside a container so that the juices do not drip onto other food items. So by this, we conclude the safety, your food safety at home. What about the safety of our children? So just a brief, I'm going to be talking about the safety of the lunch boxes. We need to pay attention to 3 factors here. The first is the type of the food that we're packing, the time, and the temperature. Why the time and the temperature? Because we already discussed that term danger zone. We cannot put it at high temperatures for a long period of time. So I'm going to dwell more on the type of food. What should I pack? These are the items that do not require refrigeration, okay? and can be easily packed in the kids' lunchbox. So you have fruits and apples, and please make sure that the fruits and apples are whole, are not cut. Yani do not cut the apples, do not cut the bananas for your kid. They need to be whole. Baked goods, such as banana breads and cookies, and we can use this as a treat. Now, a lot of dietitians will actually hate me for that, but you can give a kid a treat from now and then. Nuts, they're healthy and they're safe. Sandwiches, again, you have sandwiches that do not require refrigeration, such as the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, any type of hard cheeses. Now, you're gonna tell me, are these the only sandwiches I can pack for my kid? Of course not, okay? If you decide to pack deli meats, soft cheeses, white cheeses, it's fine. You can do that. However, please make sure to place ice packs in your kid's lunchbox, okay? Now, do you actually have to go to the supermarket and buy ice box? Not necessarily. You can make your own by simply freezing a bottle of water, okay? Now, you can also pack milk to school. Again, if you have ice packs, and you can always rely on water, as we said. All right. Now, I see this a lot, okay? These are the plastic lunch boxes, the cute lunch boxes that everyone loves, with the Disney characters and everything. They are cute and amazing, and the kid will love it, will love them, but they're not actually safe, because they will not maintain the temperature of the food, okay, and will not keep the food at appropriate temperature. So please use these, modify them, put animations on them. A lot of people are doing it. So, and these are best these are insulated lunch boxes, and they maintain the temperature of the food item that you have, and they maintain the health and safety of your kids. Okay? Thank you. Do you have any questions? If not, we're gonna pick up the winners now, okay? Yeah.
When people talk about like foodborne illnesses that happen from home or restaurant, what are the most common causes? You listed a chain of behaviors.
Yeah. So basically, here what we're talking about is at home. Okay, so in your scenario, you're talking about a chain of restaurants. Okay, at home, I can count zillions. The first thing, defrosting food. Most of the moms defrost their food just underneath the sun. They let it cool down at room temperatures up until it's defrosted. 2, some people actually clean and rinse their chicken. Okay, and they think it's better, but what they're doing is they're spreading the bacteria inside the sink. 3, when they cook, they just leave whatever they cooked up until the kids come back home. They just reheat it and put it on the plate. You want me to keep on moving? 4, when they purchase items, as I said, the supermarket, everything goes in the same pack that is going for refrigeration. I see that a lot. 5, they do not wash the fruits and vegetables properly, okay? They use only water for that. Water does not clean the fruits and vegetables. You actually need to sanitize it. Do I keep on coming? Yeah? I think that's enough. It's okay. Any more questions? Yeah.
Maybe related to this one, and the way the garbage crisis is.
No.
What additional measures do we have to take into consideration, or do we have to apply? And also, when we wash vegetables, so is our water,
Yeah.
we're using
Is it potable or not? So my recommendation when it comes to washing fruits and vegetables is they can use the normal water. You put salt and vinegar. But the final step, which is the rinsing step, use bottled water. Yeah, to maintain okay? The sanitation tablets are okay. They are fine. These are chlorine-based. Okay, it's fine, but a lot of people think I do not want to put chemicals inside my fruits and vegetables, but they are completely safe to use. Okay? Any more questions? Yeah.
Do you recommend using this at the supermarket that they put water they wash?
Yeah, but these are basically, as I said, chlorine-based, okay? We all have bleachers at home. يعني, an example is Clorox, Odex, and all these things. So these chlorine tablets, they actually kill the bacteria that is present. However, if you are starting, the initial load of bacteria is huge, they will not be able to kill everything or the bacteria present in the water tank. Okay, so this is why if you want to not use the bottled water, you can buy filters and you can install filter units at home. It depends. It depends whether it contains meat or not. So safety-wise, it can go up for longer times, but safety and quality not more than 1 month. Okay, because after that, it will affect the quality of the food. Any more questions? Okay, yeah. Yeah, now, please make sure that you pick and take flyers just as you are leaving. I'm gonna pick the winners now. There are 3 winners. We have 3 winners. One from the bottom, one from the middle. Karen? Mancha? Karen? Emil Khalaf. Because they have class and the third and final one. Maya Sultana. Yeah, mobile. It's up to the roaster actually. You select the other 3 people, but select 3 others. But, okay, these are the winners. You have your set of numbers, you can contact them. Thank you.
Thank you, Reem. Last but not least, a final few words from Dr. Imad Tufaili, Chairperson of the Nutrition and Food Science Department. Dr. Tufaili is Professor of Food Science and the current chair of the department. He earned his master's and PhD from the University of Reading in UK on conducted research at Rutgers, the University of New Jersey, and the University of Minnesota in USA. His research interests include quality of cereal foods, fortification of bread with minerals, determination of shelf life of foods, and drivers of food choice by consumers. Dr. Tufaili published 45 peer-reviewed papers and has also served as reviewer for leading journals in food science and technology. Please welcome Dr. Tufaili to give the closing remarks.
Thank you, Sibel. I promise, ختامها مسك. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for your participation in today's event. It has been our pleasure to have you join us over the course of the day. I would like to take this opportunity to close the event with few key recommendations, and as Sibel says, with future insights. Now, first, we're proud of our distinguished graduates who have reached sky high. Now, by taking nutrition to a whole new level, Dr. Qassis has exemplified true leadership, achieved big, and instilled pride in her community. And instilling genuine pride as a result of accomplishments is never easy, as real pride is rooted in purpose. Now, in common with other achievers, Dr. Qassis has passion for what she does, as well as for how she does it. I suppose many would try to emulate her. Not only we are proud of our people, but also of our traditional Lebanese diet, which is variation of the typical Mediterranean diet. Now, research in this department has shown that what we call the Lebanese Mediterranean diet represents a healthy and, more importantly, a sustainable cultural heritage. This diet can be used as a model to promote sustainable diets and develop sustainable food-based dietary guidelines to respond to societal needs and alleviate the burden of food insecurity in the country and possibly in the region. Now, finally, we are very excited to be part of AUB's Global Health Initiative and thereby living up to the challenge of working across disciplines to address global health challenges with a sustainable lens. The Nutrition, Obesity, and Related Diseases program will be instrumental in bridging the great knowledge and service gap in the region and beyond, and will position our experts as leaders of change nationally, regionally, and globally. With that, I would like to once again express my sincere thanks to all of you for your participation in today's activities. I hope that the Department of Nutrition and Food Science will continue to be a national and a regional pioneer in its disciplines, and that this event has demonstrated to you the effectiveness of nutrition and food and serving humankind for a healthier and more sustainable future. Good afternoon, everyone, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Dr. Tufaili. Thank you all for attending today. It has been a pleasure to host you and hope you have enjoyed our event. Just before you leave, I would like to extend a very special thank you to Dr. Lara Nasruddin, to Ms. Reem Hamzi, my colleague, who has organized this event from A to Z and who has been following up on every single detail, and to Ms. Rola Shidia, our communication officer, and her assistants, Ms. Dana Kaisi and Ms. Rana Busada, for their hard work. This event wouldn't have been a success without them, for sure. And also thanks to all the ushers for their assistance today. The event has now come to a close, and thank you. And by the way, activities are still running until 3 p.m., so have fun. Thanks.